Hi, Erica. How are
Hi,
you?
Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Very well. Yourself?
Good. So, Erica Mandl is here with us at Sparkling Discoveries, and she is the director of wine at Korbel Champagne Cellars. How exciting is that?
I love it.
Yeah,
I've been here 28 years now, so
that's a question I had for you. So, 28 years, that's a long time. Obviously, you were not the director of winemaking since then.
nope. I worked my way up pretty much through the lab, I would say, that side of things. I got my degree from UC Davis in biochemistry. And my first harvest here at Korbel was back in 1997, and actually started not even in the lab, started out in the scale house weighing grape trucks in, weighing them in
It's
and out all
so
day long.
That is so amazing. What a history that is. I want to hear more about that. So, Corbell and this beautiful picture you have behind you, it's just beautiful. Tell us a little bit about Corbell.
Yeah, Korbel, for as young as a country as America is, United States is, Korbel has a long history. The winery was established all the way back in 1882. And these days, and as big as Korbel is, it's to this day still family owned. And it's been owned by two families in its history. So for the first roughly 70 years, it was owned by the Korbel family. And for the last 70 years, it's still owned by the Heck family. So as big as it
Amazing.
is, still a family owned winery. Yep.
That is amazing. And that long history, it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, sparkling wine houses in the country. That's
hmm
amazing.
Yeah, definitely one of the oldest. The Corbels made their way to California. They're actually originally from Bohemia, is their homeland. And it's kind of an interesting story. The F in F Corbel and Brothers Inc. winery is a gentleman by the name of Francis. And back in 1848, Francis got in a little bit of trouble. He was a student and he brought a gun to a political rally in Prague. Shots were fired, and Francis wound up getting a 17-year prison sentence in the Dolly Borka, which was an infamous prison back in the day.
Wow.
So, only 2 years into his 17-year prison sentence, Francis's mother got the brilliant idea to sneak in a pair of civilian clothes underneath her clothes. And Francis snuck out of the Dolly Borkin prison.
Wow. And
Crazy, right? That
and
takes some
came here
guts.
and he
And then,
came here.
yeah, he from there he spent a very small amount of time in Holland, in the Netherlands, learning the art of cigar box making. And then he was only there for a short while, and then he bought a transatlantic ticket over to New York City. This was in the early 1850s at this point. He was joined by his two brothers, which you hear a lot about them as well in the Corbel history. Francis, the main one I mentioned, and then Joseph and Anton. They were kind of the three main brothers that were, mostly involved in their businesses and whatnot. So anyhow, in 1850s, they're in New York at this point, and they heard about this thing going out west called the Gold Rush. So they got real excited about that. Took the a 3 year journey by boat. The Panama Canal hadn't even been
Oh,
built.
wow.
Yeah,
I
they
love
had to
that.
take the Isthmus of Panama over, and basically 3 years later by boat, they made it to San Francisco, and the gold rush was already over. So they had to come up with a new idea and new ways to make money. And basically, what they did is they bought a cigar box and furniture factory in San Francisco. And they also bought land here at the winery, as well as up in Humboldt, and used the land for timber. They had a timber mill up in this area. So they would take the redwood and that's what they would use, for their cigar boxes and their furniture.
Did they plant grapes right away or
Not right away. So this was still like in the
long
mid
history, long
18,
history?
yeah, long history. So, and I'll go through it pretty quickly. But so this was still like in the 1850s. And then I would say it was in 1876 that the cigar box factory actually burnt down. So that was more like in the late 1870s that they really focused their entrepreneurial efforts, ideas up here. And at that point, they had logged the area around the winery. So they didn't have their cigar box factory anymore. So they played around with lots of different crops. They actually had a dairy here on site. They owned a couple boats. They owned a ferry. They owned a schooner. They actually built the railway out here to help them with their moving their timber back in the day. And they grew all sorts of crops. They grew alfalfa, tobacco, olives, plums, all sorts of things. And it was in the late 1870s that they sent soil samples into UC Davis. And it was through UC Davis that they recommended they grow grapes for wine. So 1870s is when the first vineyards went in. 1882 was when the winery was established. By the late 1880s, they had done, had their first brandies were produced by then. And they had in 1890, they recruited a winemaker from their homeland of Bohemia, a gentleman by the name of Frank Hassick. And all through the 1890s, they really grew the California sparkling wine program so that by the turn of the century, Korbel was one of the largest sparkling wine houses in the.
Wow. And what grapes did they plant first?
That's a good question. It wasn't like it was kind of interesting alternate varieties, and not so much like the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noirs that you hear about today, but different.
Yeah, I would think with
It's
their
hard to find
background.
that information. I have tried to dig through that, but I might have to do some
Well,
further
I
digging.
think
I know it's somewhere out
you and I should get together and write the Korbel history. That is
there. Yeah,
fascinating. And you
it
know a lot. That's very, very interesting. What other houses were started then? Was Buena Vista going by
Yeah,
then?
I would say in those times. I mean, like you say, I think we were one of the first, not the first sparkling wine producers from what I could see when I
You
do
really
some
have a
research.
strong history. And
Mhm.
tell me about your facility because we're looking at this beautiful brick building. It almost looks like from that era.
It does, and it's funny. The what we call the brandy tower is we haven't made brandy here for many decades, but there's an old brandy tower when the winery was originally built, back in the late 1870s, and it's actually a replica of the tower that Francis Korbel saw out his window at the Dolly Borka prison. So a kind of, I guess, a reminder to himself of
Rita,
all
I
the
don't,
hardships and everything he had to do to get here.
wow.
So, and the Corbels, I mean, those guys were very entrepreneur. They were entrepreneurs. They were businessmen. I mean, they had their fingers in lots of different pots and businesses. They built the winery themselves, brick by brick, is what they say. So, it wasn't until 1954 when the Heck family bought the winery from the Corbels, and it was Adolf Heck, who was a third generation winemaker. His son, Gary Heck, is the owner till this day. So the
Amazing.
Heck family, that's when you really saw the growth in the winery. So, when Adolf first bought the winery from the Corbels in 1954, it was like I think about roughly 3,000 case production, and he took it from about 3,000 cases up to around about 150,000 cases by 1982. And then that's when Gary, the current owner, took over. And then Gary has seen the winery grow from 150,000 cases all the way up to a million plus that we do
Wow.
to today.
That's exciting. I
Yeah,
bet the
lots
Korbel
of great.
brothers are very happy with their
Yes,
sale of that. They had it for 100 years. That's amazing too.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah, very exciting. So tell us
yeah.
about the property. What's there now if I come to visit you?
Well, I mean, I would love it's a great destination place. So it's not just coming out and tasting sparkling wines, which of course you have to come out and taste our sparkling wines, but we also have a beautiful deli that you could grab a picnic lunch or some snacks. We have beautiful tours. You could take a history tour. Our gardens are absolutely gorgeous.
Oh,
There's still the
beautiful.
original Korbel house, which is a historical landmark on the property, along with the English gardens. And kind of a fun thing that we're going to do once the weather starts to get nice, which it's beautiful today.
Wow.
I think we have a little rain coming, but we have a beautiful back porch area right behind our tasting room. And we're going to turn that into a fun little bubble lounge for people to come out, relax, hang out, enjoy
Great.
some
Well,
bubbles.
leading
Yeah.
into the bubbles, since you since you are the director of winemaking, tell
Yes.
us about what kind of bubbles you make.
Well, these days we make a lot of different kind of bubbles. We have 14 different sparkling wines in our portfolio. Yeah. So I feel like we have everything for everybody, from dry to sweet. This would be a great time to come out to the winery because just the week before last, we released our latest vintages, which are the 2021 vintage of our natural blend, which is a Russian River Valley appellation blend of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay grapes.
By
Uh,
natural, do you mean no dosage?
it's low dosage. It does have a little bit of dosage, so not quite bone dry. 0.7%. So definitely one of the driest sparkling wines we make. And then we also just released our 2021 vintage Masters Reserve Blanc de Noir, which again is a Russian River Valley, Sonoma County product, but it's primarily a red grape blend. So it's predominantly Russian River Valley Pinot Noir, but it's also got some alternative grape varieties that you don't necessarily see all the time in sparkling wines. One being Sangiovese, which is an Italian, yeah, variety that makes lovely, very kind of black peppery, spicy, kind of strawberry, raspberry, Blanc de Noir or
You're making me
cuvee
very
material.
thirsty.
Yeah, that one's drier too. That one's a little on the drier side. It's a slightly sweeter than the natural. It's 1% dosage versus 0.7% dosage. And then the last one that's super fun, that is limited time only, and you're only going to be able to get it for so long, is we also just released our newest vintage of our Pinot Gris champagne, which is made from Russian River Valley Pinot Gris grapes predominantly. It's also
That's
got a little bit
great.
of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir blended in there, just a little bit.
You're
Interesting.
having fun with this, Erica.
We have a lot of fun. So we always try to have something new and exciting, a few different offerings beyond, basically our portfolio, which already has, like I said, I feel like something for everybody. So,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
Oh, so it sounds like if you come to Korbel, you can really get a broad spectrum of what sparkling wine is and a lot of
Yes,
experimentation besides normal, what we would normally expect.
exactly. Yeah. We source our fruit from all over the state of California. It's all within California. And we experiment with lots of what we call alternate, sparkling wine varieties. So Sangiovese, Gamay, like I mentioned, we have a Pinot Gris in our portfolio. We've had a sparkling Riesling in the past. We've done a sparkling Shiraz, in addition to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. We don't have a lot of Pinot Meunier because there's not that much Pinot Meunier actually planted in the state of California.
Yeah.
So we have had Pinot Meunier in and out of our programs over the years, but it's usually a very small percentage, and the lion's share is, Russian River Valley. We're in Pinot Noir and Chardonnay country, so that's pretty much what's planted out here. But we, like I said, we do source grapes from, as far north as Mendocino County, down to as far south as like Fresno area even.
Well, I would say everyone has to come visit Korbel then. And
I agree.
we're going to do some more videos with you and explore more of Korbel. But thank you so much for giving this time to us and
Absolutely. Thank you,
exposing us
Rebecca.
to this fabulous place, Korbel.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Erica.